Right. Welcome back to Brush Up Your Game and Rankums. Today I have Tristan with me. Tristan, welcome back. It's been a few episodes since you've been here, but glad to have you back.
Howdy, yeah, it's been a while. It's felt like I've been stuck on the Genesis planet or something, but I'm back. So
Ooh, now the question is which one? Sorry, that's a lower deck spoiler.
yeah, spoiler alert.
Oh, I'm probably gonna get flack for that. It's not like 3 years old or 40 years old at this point.
Well, just make sure this episode releases sometime next year. You'll be good.
Late December. Eh,
There you go. Yeah.
I don't know. Close enough. But yeah, today, as the title says, Galor class ships. There are 10 of them. And like before we even get started, outside of the generics, I actually had a really tough time ranking these.
Yeah, I agree. I full disclosure, I'm not a huge Dominion fan, but I have to say that the abilities here are just really solid. I mean, we've done a lot
Hmm.
of reviews here of various ships, and I feel like there's always a couple that are clearly bottom row, and there's always a few that are come to the top. Here, it's pretty good across the board. I really couldn't argue. You go two or three or four different ways with your top two or three ships here, and I couldn't argue with the results. I think it really comes down to probably personal preference and play style here.
Yeah, and a lot probably comes down to the situation you're looking for.
Yeah.
I've been playing some of the missions that involve Cardassians, and I'm like, oh, this is a perfect ship for this mission, and this is a perfect ship for that mission, and it's like, it almost feels like there's a Galler for just about any kind of play style you're looking for. So that's some kind of like overview, um, and we'll try to have some more subjective criteria that points to one being better than another, but for me, there's a lot of interchange in this list based on the day.
Definitely. I've gone through a couple different drafts here, and honestly, up until a little while before we were recording, I was making adjustments to it. So,
I think for me, my list came down to how much do I personally enjoy playing with the ship.
sure. Yeah,
I mean,
definitely. Again, it's
you got to
a
have
lot of play
something.
style.
Yeah. All right. Number 10. And I think this probably comes as no shock. Ooh, dissension from the get go. I like it. Why don't you kick it off?
Sure. Again, maybe I'm trying not to be biased against the Borg, and to me here, it's without an ability, without a recost. I just feel like it's really a lot of points to put in for the stats here, unless you want to run Borg Tech. 5144 is fine, but I mean, if you want an equivalent Dominion ship, I think the recosted Jem'Hadar battleship comes in at 29, and that's a
Mm,
much beefier ship with some more attack dice. For a lesser cost, you could do a generic, not Galor, but that's what we're doing right now.
Keldon,
What's the other Cardassian ship?
the Keldons,
The Keldons, yes, thank you.
and I do
So,
love me some Keldons.
yes. I mean, for a 20-point generic, it's got a battle station action. It's a 5-1-4-2.
Yeah,
It's a little bit weaker, but you could throw on reinforced shielding for 4 points and it would still be cheaper. I just don't like the cost here. It doesn't pay out for me. So,
okay. I I can understand that. Yeah, for me, I put the mirror, which I was gonna say. I figured that's your number nine.
yeah,
It
yeah. So not a lot of dissension here.
it suffers from the mirror cause,
Yeah.
as we've frequently pointed out. It's kind of a go-to, but there's nothing inspiring about the ship, and Mirror doesn't have the fun stuff that it needs to be any good. There's not great Mirror secondary weapons. There's some fun Mirror Universe crew. Don't get me wrong,
Mhm.
but there's not even great Mirror Universe tech to make this work. Like the most interesting thing I can think you can do is maybe put a cloaking device on here in faction, and okay, that gets partially intriguing, but
Mhm.
not really.
No, no, yeah, you're right. There's a couple Galar only upgrades, but you're paying a cross faction penalty. Yeah, there's no upside here. Unfortunately, the mirror faction just doesn't have the upgrades to justify using a generic like this.
I get that. Um, yeah, so my number nine, I put the generic Dominion Galler in here, uh, just because. So my idea is, and why the Borg ends up a little higher is, if I want a lot of dice, it still becomes cheaper to run the ship, the Borg ship, than to try to figure out a way to get a consistent fifth attack die. You can run attack or the tactical reticle or reticle, and that can work. But yeah, the Galers are fine, but it's like with such interesting and good named abilities, it's almost like why would you ever run the generic? I I get that generic Galers were pretty darn good in Alliance, but that's because they had a super ability built in.
Mhm.
And aside from that, nothing's super inspiring for me about Galers. I've always said Keldons are the Cardassian ship you want rather than Galers, but a lot of that had to come down to price, action bar, and named abilities. The named abilities have swung into the favor of Galers, I would argue. But Galers just they're cheaper, which is great, but you pay a penalty for it. You're losing battle stations. You're losing a fifth attack die. You gain a little durability, but for me, a generic Galler is just kind of okay. It's there, but I think I'd almost rather swarm Jemadar fighters at this point than run a Galler class.
Yeah, I mean, I think the gold standard, if you're looking at the quality of a generic, is the bird of prey.
Mm-hmm.
There you have a four attack generic. It's not quite as durable as the Galler here, but it's a lot more maneuverable. It has more evasive quality, and it's going to be cheaper. I mean, you could run almost three bird of preys for two Gallers, and that's where I'd rather go. I think this generic suffers with kind of a lot of generics where it's without a named ability, it's just kind of there. And unless you want to play into the theme of a Dominion Cardassian fleet, there are better options out there for similar cost.
Yeah, there are. Um, all right. So my number eight is the Prakesh, and I do like the named ability. I think it's fine. If you're within range one of a friendly ship, you may immediately perform one of the actions listed on your action bar as a free action. The issue for me, there's so few. There's only three,
Mm-hmm.
and it gets really tough to actually put a meaningful action somewhere else. Sure, you can do two action bar actions, but what are you really going to do? Target lock and scan? Um, and mirror captains to take a action. I guess you could Admiral Worf with somebody, or use an action to uh, trigger Admiral Worf onto a different ship. That can work, but it's kind of like the Prakesh wants to be this cool double action ship, but it isn't. It just isn't great at doing that. And I sit here and I go, well, there's times I want to run it. I'd probably run it over the generic because at least I'm getting bonus actions, but I just want more out of it.
Yeah, I echo you with the lack of an action bar. I mean, 90% of ships have four actions, and this ability would be optimized for any of those. I like the idea of going cross faction here. I mean, the Prakesh was Gul Dukat's flagship, at least for a period of time. You can put Gul Dukat on here. The version I think that comes with the is it the Aldara, where he gets the free battle station, or I think it's an evade,
Ooh, yeah.
and you can do a free target lock. You could do a battle station. You could do a scan. You could cross faction some torpedoes or something, fed torpedoes, and have a pretty mean little ship. But the problem is it's a mirror, and you're
Mm-hmm.
paying more for all of that. I This is maybe my nitpick, but the Prakesh was clearly a Prime Universe ship. It was Gul Dukat's ship. This should have been a Dominion ship, and just give any of the other named Galors, the Mirror faction, whatever. It would work a lot better for me. And then it has double weapons on a Mirror ship. The Mirror faction has terrible secondary weapons. I don't even want to put one weapon on there, maybe a rear facing thing, much less two. So that's
Yeah.
another knock against it.
Either a rear or a 360. They do at least have those, but they don't have the
Yeah.
updated versions. They're all disabled. They're no time
Hmm.
tokens. And
Yes.
like I
Yeah.
said, Mirror needs just a weapon update pack.
They really could use that. Yeah,
They
something like
they
that.
really could. It's not even that much to ask. It's just a little something for help. So my number seven is a ship I'm actually rather fond of, the Aldara. I love it in a 1v1 match. When a ship that started the activation phase in your forward firing arc moves, if you haven't moved yet, you can immediately change your maneuver. You only get to do it once per round, but I, I like it for the huh, I didn't think you were going to do that. Oh, well, guess it wasn't actually a surprise because I get to change my move. Uh, and I love double tech because the Galers have gotten some really good tech lately. But it almost seems like if you're trying to formation fly at all, there's kind of not really great options to change your movement to. And I guess the Eldara can go rogue and do what it needs to do to cover a ship that did the unexpected. But Galers end up being a real pain to ever get back in formation. The turns are red. Dominion doesn't have a great way to get rid of Ox Power token. Uh, and your green moves to clear your Ox are very limited. So yeah, you can react and I mean this is a perfect ability for a 180 ship. But it feels so limited in its utility that I I don't find myself using it a lot. I remember back in the day when I did all of the reinforcement boosters in a tournament. I loved this ability because it came with a pretty good captain in terms of captain skill, and this won at least one match uh, just on the named ability. But everything else was just kind of like, I'm not getting much trigger because it's really tough for Dominion to ever get a high enough captain skill to make it work
Mhm.
reliably.
Yeah, and actually here I'm losing track of my own list here, but I
Oh,
have that
you're
one at
good.
6. So um, just to kind of add to that, I agree with everything you said, especially with Dominion being so synergistic with their fleets. You want to try to maintain that formation. I think the other thing I have with it, and I like these kind of movement tricks. I recently had to finally put a new blog post out there with Federation fleet using a lot of maneuver things, and Benjamin Maxwell has a very similar ability. I love comboing him up with some other cards to reactivate that ability every turn. But I think also the more experience you get with the game, the better you are at anticipating what your opponent's going to do. So I think the less useful this kind of ability becomes. There are always going to be situations where maybe you don't know and it's a 50-50, so you're going to just kind of gamble, and if you mess up, well then you can switch it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for some players that are really good at that anticipation, this is just not an ability that's going to be very very useful for them, or something they're going to use a lot of. And you got to tie it to a high skill captain. And the question is the Eldora the ship that you want to commit a bunch of skill resources and cost into to get that high skill captain. I don't know if that it's always going to be the answer.
Probably not. Now, that being said, you brought up a really good point, and I like it. If I'm trying to teach someone the game, one ship on one ship, I would, if they said they're interested in Cardassians or Dominion at all, I'll give them the Aldara. I'll give them a higher captain skill than me, and I'll say, okay,
Mhm.
let's go, let's play, and it gives them the forgiveness of movement. Where if they make a mistake in planning their move, who cares? They can see what I do, and then they can adjust. And I think it would work pretty well.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a really strong feature of the Aldara to be new player friendly. All right. So, yeah, the generic Cardassian Borg Galor at number 6. That was as high as I could go. Um, I do like the 5 attack dice. I like the added durability. I like being able to put that Galor shield upgrade on it, so it goes up to 6 shields. Um, and there are some Borg tech that make it at least a little intriguing, but it's not like amazing. I don't think it needs to be amazing. But yeah, it for me just you can put a good Borg captain on here. Either the target lock captain, the battle station Borg captain would actually be a pretty good one. Then you got target lock battle stations and 5 dice, 180 arc. It's pretty solid for under what, like 35 points if you had the shield upgrade
Mhm.
in there. It's a nice little bonus ship that your opponent really has to make a decision. Like, is this the ship I'm going to focus several attacks in on, or is this a ship I'm going to like let roll basically 5 hits on me every turn? So I like it. And if in the right kind of mission, Elam Garrick's actually a nice include on here because then you're getting Dominion and Borg as factions that he can have an auto or a guaranteed hit that can't be canceled on. And
Yeah,
that's
that's
a
a good point.
nice little extra. That's, again, not amazing. I think there's much better places for Garrick. But if you're trying to be in faction, this is a very rare combo of factions. So anyway, I know you're not the biggest Borg fan, Tristan, and I'm not trying to ever make somebody into a believer of Borg. I do think though, if Borg's going to exist, this is one of the fun ways to have Borg in the game that doesn't feel like, ugh, you're playing Borg, really? Because if somebody shows up with this, I'm like, oh, okay, fine, we'll have a fine day.
Yeah, it's not a Borg ship that I absolutely despise or anything like that. That's
Right.
for sure.
All right. So now that we've caught up and we basically had the same list going through, let's see if it keeps lining up. That'll be the real game.
That, actually, there we go. So
Ooh, synergy. I like it. See, this ship for me, there's nothing really special about it for me. I but I do consider it better than the generic because it gets an extra shield and an extra what weapon slot. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, I don't think I've ever used the named ability. I don't think I ever want to use the named ability. Spending a drone token to set a defense die to an evade. I guess in conjunction with the counterattack die, it has some intrigue to me. Because then I can deal a crit back to somebody. But that might be really the only combo I'd ever use this named ability for.
yeah. I think in one of our blind booster tournaments, I drew this ship and I did use the ability and it was fine. You know, uh, I but I mean you're spending a resource to set that die.
Yeah.
Drone tokens are usually a finite resource. you're you're setting the die during the declare target step, and most of the time, obviously you're going to set it to an evade, so you're going to save yourself some damage. But there might be some times your opponent just whiffs entirely on the attack, and now you just wasted that resource for nothing. Um, I think we'll see in a minute with the Traeger, which is basically the counterpart for this ship. That basically it's kind of a counterpart to this ability as well, but it triggers at a much nicer part of the attack phase,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a renewable resource. So just works so much better than this version. So
Yeah, the timing on this ship always bugged me. Like, why declare target? Like, if you're
yeah,
gonna go for a weird timing, it would have been so much better to do it during the compare results step, or even just roll defense dice step. Let you see what you're
yeah,
up against and decide.
exactly. That makes much more sense to because at that point you know whether or not you want to use that ability.
Yeah.
So seems weird. I don't know.
All right. Number 4.
Here we go. So my number four is it's glitching out on me. I'm not sure where the card went. I tried picking it up and it's just flashing on my screen. I can't grab it.
Oh,
It would be the Reklar.
okay, okay.
So just pretend it's there, or we can clone it later or
I
something like
I
that. But
can I can get you a Reckler.
perfect. I just see it at the bottom of my screen. It keeps twitching in and out. It's like it's using. It must have picked up that interface cloaking device from the Pegasus or
There
something.
you
I
go.
can't. There we go. Perfect. So yeah, I can just kind of very briefly. There's nothing wrong with this ability. I like it. It gives the Galor class a battle station token. It's not even a battle station action. So if you can pick up that action somewhere else, you can get two battle station tokens if you want. Give you some extra defense dice. But for some reason, every time I look at this ability, it just seems kind of plain. What's most other ships can just take a battle station token and you can pick up defense die. It just doesn't. There's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly serviceable. It just doesn't excite me, and I think that's why it just falls a little bit short on my list here.
Okay, I understand. I disagree, but I understand. My number 4 is the Traeger. You mentioned it, but yeah, being able to disable a shield to cancel a hit or crit, it's like, hey, yeah, as long as you don't actually destroy me, I basically had a free evade token, and I really like that. It's extra durability and kind of everything to like. Uh, it, with extra shields existing for Galors, this is a good bonus. I think that I think there's 3 better Galors out there, but this one's kind of grown on me. I like what's out there. Um, I it is susceptible to focus fire,
Mhm.
and it it is only a once per round ability, at least as far as I understand it. So
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah,
that kind of hurts, but that can still be good. Um, I like that it can cancel a crit, so that
yeah,
you're taking one less crit, no crits if it works out nicely. And the bonus is the damage doesn't actually have to be being done to your shields. There's several weapons out there that bypass your shield, so you can say, "Oh well, hey, I've got a shield. I can disable a shield, cancel your crit, and then only like one hit's going through to my hull."
Mhm.
So good stuff there. I don't think it's amazing, but I do think it's at least a solid ship. Which brings us over to the top 3 now. And I had to get these in order. But we'll see if we have any more lineup? And my guess is no, just because of the way we line things up. But all right,
Maybe.
so why do you like the Traeger here at number three?
Uh, again, I think this is, to my mind, maybe a better version of the assimilated vessel ability. I echo pretty much everything that you said there. It's renewable, it's a disable. You can get rid of a critical hit, which could mean the difference between uh, you know surviving this round and the next, or avoiding a warp core breach. Um, it's one of those things that it doesn't take an action. Just you can just do it. Um, with the Galor class shields, you can kind of offset that disable effect a little bit. And it's I think for me also from the perspective of a fan, I'm pretty sure it's the first Galor class that we ever see in Star Trek. It's comes from one of my favorite episodes of TNG, The Wounded, probably like a top 10 for me.
Mm,
So I think there's just kind of maybe some personal interest from it as well, that makes it just maybe a hair better than the Reklar in my mind. So
okay, I like it. So I went with the VTAR
mhm.
at my number three, and I know it's in your top two because it hasn't shown
Yep.
up. But I'm, I, I guess I haven't played with it a ton, and I like that it it does give other friendly ships bonus actions, but you really have to commit to a support role with this ship because you're giving up your action to help other ships. And that can work. That can be a great tool if you use it well. But you really have to commit to that kind of a strategy. It can be a great thing if you're using the VTAR in a swarm of Jemadar attack ships. This can be deadly because you're giving them target lock and battle stations. And whoa, watch out.
Yeah.
That is death by a thousand cuts with quality. Um, Maybe that's death by a thousand scalpels. Anyway,
Yeah, maybe.
um, and it's a good range. I like everything that's here. I just find myself really enjoying the other two ships that I have higher more. The VTAR really does serve a good purpose. I struggled with the top three. I'm like, I could put these in any order and I'd have a great day. Uh, it just comes down to play styles. And I think by the time I'm investing 22 points, I don't really feel like a support ship. I feel like a ship that should carry a little more weight. But that's why the VTAR
That
fell to three for me.
makes sense.
Did we get one last? Nope, we do
Oh
not.
no, that's okay.
That is okay.
I'll just kind of add to the VTAR. I mean, for 22 points, I'm not even adding anything to it. I'm perfectly fine with that as kind of my number four ship, maybe in a fleet. It is, that action, that ability is great for synergy within a fleet, which Cardassians excel at. I should say
Mm.
Dominion excels at. Um, the only knock on this is it's only applicable to Dominion ships. I mean, I
Mm.
can't imagine if it was available to every
Oh,
friendly ship. I mean, this thing would be probably in every fleet that we've seen in
never.
tournament games since it came out. But I mean, for what it is, like I said, the range is good. There's just so much you can do with Cardassian ships if you can get some extra actions. Um, and I think it's the cheapest Galler in a 4144 for 22 points, and even if it doesn't have a ton of quality itself, I mean, if you have a four ship fleet, it turns one action into three. That's pretty solid. So
Oh yeah, it is. Absolutely. I do very much enjoy it. All right, my number two, and by process of elimination, your number one is the
yep.
Kraxen. And wow, I came into this thinking the Kraxen was going to be at the top, um, and I struggled to put the Reclar above it. I'm just gonna do it for the sake of completion. But yeah, the Kraxen being able to transfer damage is something in this game. I believe we see just this one ship do.
I think, well, the ship wise, yeah, I think there's that new, is it a tech card in the Alliance Part 2 for Federation, which allows you to kind of transfer some damage or something like that.
You've
I have to
got
look it up
the
now.
shield regenerator. You can give or not give a let a ship within range add a shield.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking about. Yeah,
There's that, and then there's
yeah,
like old core and colo that intercept an attack.
sure. Yep.
But I mean, that tells us there's so few ways to redirect what your opponent actually wants to do. And there's always SETI eel, right?
Sure.
Um,
Or there's a Bashir, which yeah, same thing as
yeah,
core basically.
yeah.
Yeah,
So what? 5 cards in a game of
not a lot. Yeah,
close to 2,500 cards.
yeah,
Five that do something with negating, rearranging, moving around the damage. Yeah, and now that Galors get more shields, the Kraxen can have 7 shields. That just makes it even more potent. Uh, Plus, it has two tech slots. It is slotted for its purpose.
hmm
Unlike other ships, which can be offensively minded and have one weapon slot, or need to have crew support but have one crew. This is technology minded and has the 2 tech. Uh, I love it. I love what it does. Yeah, it suffers from the lack of action bar and whatnot, but it doesn't matter. I remember one of my first fun mixing plays was putting I think it's Mirok, Romulan captain, who repairs a damage if he's within range of a friendly ship, or maybe it's if he does a green maneuver on the Kraxen.
yeah,
And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take damage and then I'm going to heal a damage. And
yeah.
when my play group saw me doing that, they said, "David, you have broken something, and we're not sure we like this." Uh, and then they destroyed the Kraxen, and then we moved on. But yeah, the Kraxen's a great ship, and it has been. It's gone through its ebbs and flows, but it's a really cool ship, and people need to pay more attention to it in mission play because if you're trying to protect an objective that counts as a ship, the Kraxen is always up there.
Yeah, I mean, I love everything about this ship. So I feel like I'm probably more of a defensive minded player, trying to always beef up my hit points and what have you on ships. So this ability plays right into that. I know I especially in my blog sometimes I will get snarky with whiz kids about certain design elements and stuff behind the game. But the one thing that I will give them absolute credit for is that they oftentimes have some really great uh, abilities built into cards that make sense within Star Trek canon. And here, the Craxon, in the episode Defiant in DS9, it was ordered by Dukat to shield the Defiant from the incoming Obsidian Order Keldon classes. So it totally makes sense. It's extending its shields around your friendly ships. I love that. And it gets kind of into an expensive support ship, but in theory, you can run Type 3 Galor class shields on here. That becomes a replacement value for your shields to bring it up to 6. You could also slot reinforced shields on here for another +2. You'd have eight shields on here. You can put on, Murok. You can put Glendaro as an action to repair, and I mean, pair that with any of with any other ship that you want, and it becomes a real, I think, nightmare for an opponent. Um, it's just fantastic. And the other thing is you don't have to transfer even all the damage. It's not even a all or nothing kind of card, which you might expect. So you can transfer the exact amount of damage that you need to say avoid allowing a critical hit to sneak through on your other ship or something like that, and
Hmm.
still spread that damage out. So there's just a lot of flexibility here. I was thinking as we're building this list, I was going, man, I would be interested to see this paired up with the Prometheus.
Ooh.
The Prometheus, you just I mean, you have the regenerative shields on there. You can mix and match how much damage you want to bleed off of the Prometheus. Now, clearly the Kraxon becomes like your the primary target of your opponent, but slap some dorsal phaser array on the Prometheus and put your hero on there with Bashir to give him range 360 attacks, and the Kraxon can do a 360 weapon. And I mean, how do you come at that? I might have to play around with that idea. So there's just so much fun, disruptive stuff that you can mix and match with this ship to frustrate your opponent. And I'm that kind of player that's gonna annoy my opposing my opposing players with that. So
Yeah. Add in a Colo Equinox for
there you go.
additional fun.
Yeah, yeah.
And let's not forget the Craxon is a Wave Zero ship. It is one of the first two Dominion ships ever made.
Yeah, it's it's pretty amazing that we still have some of these cards. Cracks on the original Enterprise. The ability still holds up there.
Yeah.
The original Picard holds up. To think, you know, in
The
I think I've made
Reliant
that.
holds up. I
Yeah,
mean,
the
I know it
line
doesn't
holds
get a
up.
ton of love, but it's still a great named ship ability.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Um, I'm going to just talk a little bit about the Reklar. The Kraxon, we can love on the Kraxon, and it deserves all the love. But the Reklar for me was the moment the Galors actually got teeth. Because, I said several ships back, Galors were missing battle stations. That's why I loved Keldons. And I loved Keldons a long time ago. When the Coronac came out, I said, oh, Keldons, that was my ship. The Keldon was the first ship that I like fell in love with, and I became like a stout defender of. Um, but to give battle stations to a Galler and to add in the extra defense dice, well, now you can put Bohica on the Reklar. And Bohica now doesn't have to be stapled to Gul Dukat to work well. I really like the fact that you get an extra defense die every time you defend. Because now a 4-2-4-4 is decently potent. It's not everything, but Tristan, where you're a defensive player, which is fantastic, and I love it. I tend to be an offensive player, so the Reklar tends to suit my play style just a little bit more. That being said, the last time I was put in a position to run a Galler class ship, I did run the Kraxon. Um, of course, it's weird in the timeline because this video will come out before that video. Uh, Yay for uh, timelines. But I like both of these ships. And the Reklar for me is my offense ship. My Kraxon's the defense ship. Give me them both because they both have a place in my fleet if I'm running Cardassian stuff. I think the Kraxon has a little bit more versatility. And maybe it is a better ship overall. But I do find a little more intrigue in Dominion crew rather than Dominion tech. So I think if anything gives it just a slight edge, I'll take the double crew slots over the double tech slots.
yeah. I mean, most of the time, double crew is gonna be that's the double slot that you want for
Yeah.
sure.
But double tech on the Kraxon was the perfect choice.
Yes.
I don't think anybody knew it in 2013.
Yeah, again, I mean, 10 years later, yeah, that's when you see the two cards that really make it stand out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of those might have been built for the Kraxon, but you know. payoff. It's great. Uh, all that being said, I don't think you can go wrong with anything in our top four. I think the Kraxen, the Reklar, the Vitar, the Traeger, they're all great ships for Galors. And we can disagree on the order, but the top four is the top four. They are all solid.
Yeah, and I think even on down the line, outside the generics, all of these ships have some place in a fleet somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not hard to justify. Sometimes I feel like I'm really stretching to make suggestions as to, oh, here's how you can make this ship work. Here, I don't think there's uh, I don't need to do that with any of these.
No, they are pretty good ships, which was a refreshing surprise for me in doing this video. Is hey, Galors, they actually are pretty good, and I like that. So, all right, I'll put it to you, and then we can put it to the audience. But uh, if another Galar were to exist, what kind of an ability would you love for it to have?
Oh, geez.
I know I should ask you these before we go to recording.
No, yeah, no, I mean, number one, I think it should be the Prime Universe Prakash.
Okay, I agree with you there. That needs to
Yeah,
happen. And we could just copy paste the Prakesh ability and call it a day.
we could, but it's
Lazy.
still as good as that ability is. It's just a little weak on on a on a Galar class ship.
It is.
I'm trying to think what would be a good ability here, Prakash. I'm trying to think in the game itself, in the show itself, Prakash. I remember that was the one that saved the Tatapa console. Took a bunch of damage before it got blown up. Um,
Mm.
maybe we have something defensive. Maybe there's kind of a built-in like cheat death ability, like once per game when the ship is destroyed, uh, remove remove all but you know uh, remove X number of damage cards and until it's got basically has one hole left, count it the cheat death, and then
Yeah.
call it a day or something. And then the ship takes an aux token or something like that. Maybe that's where I would put that. I don't know.
I could live with that. I would also say give it a second ability and then say if this ship is carrying an ambassador, you may transfer it to a ship within range 1 of your ship.
Okay.
May give it that thematicism for the Datapa Council.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that.
Right?
Yeah,
It's like, hey, why not?
or we can just transfer ambassador or transfer a crew or something like that to another ship or what have you. Yeah, I could see that working.
Yeah. I mean, there's so little done with ambassadors. Why not?
And the Dominion doesn't have any yet, so
I
that would
think,
be that would be you pack in some ambassador cards with a Prakesh uh, ship, and there you go.
yeah,
There's half of your ship pack right there.
I like it. All right. Folks, let us know what you think the Galers could use. I don't know that there's a ton that they need, but, I think there's always room for more cool ship abilities. The Reklar certainly shows us there's room for very simple ideas, but cool stuff. So, all right. Until next week, thank you for joining us and keep brushing up your game. Take care, everybody.